Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am so excited for today because we are doing an unboxing and first impression of the M.Zuiko 7-14mm F2.8 Pro. Now before we get into the good stuff, I do just want to say that this video is not sponsored. This is not a paid promotion. I am not being asked to make this video, but I did receive this lens as part of collaboration with Olympus. So with that out of the way, let's get into the good stuff. Now I don't know about you, but I love watching unboxing videos. I don't know what it is, don't ask me why, I just love watching unboxing videos. So for those of you that love watching unboxing videos, this next clip is for you, and I impromptu filmed it when I received this lens last week. If you are not interested in that, just skip to the next section. I'll leave timestamps down in the description for the basic details of the lens, my first impressions, and what I hope to get out of this lens. Dun, da, da, da. What we have here is the 7-14mm f2.8 Pro lens from Olympus. So let's unbox it. This is so exciting. Like I said, I don't know what it is, but like unboxing videos are just like a guilty pleasure of mine. I just love watching these. All right. So I love Olympus packages, are always very, very sleek. And with pretty much I think in every lens that I've ever gotten from Olympus, it always comes with a lens case. But I mean, sometimes I do use these, but just a little lens case. Move that off to the side. All right, so very well padded. And, all right. If I can figure out how to open this. Difficult. Just like that. All right. So, look how gorgeous she looks. All right, so like I said, this is the, if I can get it to focus, it's the 7-14mm f2.8 Pro. I love it. Alright, so I'd like to start these videos off with some basic details about the lens. So this is the Olympus M.Zuiko 7-14mm f2.8 Pro. This is part of their Pro line. In full frame terms, it's a 14 to 28mm. Its maximum aperture is f2.8 and the minimum is f22. It sits at about 4.17 inches long and then 3.11 inches wide, and it weighs in at 1.18 pounds. If you want more technical aspects about the lens, I suggest you just go check out Olympus's website because they do a really good job of breaking down those technical aspects. Because I'm not covering it in today's video. In today's video, I wanted to chat about sort of my first impressions from holding this lens and using it for the first time and what I'm hoping to get out of a wide angle lens. So these are literally the first impressions I had about this lens when I held it for the first time. So one of the things I noticed was its size. So when I first held it, I thought it was very comparable to the 12-40mm f2.8 Pro. And I do have my 12-40 in front of me. So this is the 12-40 and this is the 7-14mm. So you can see it's actually very close in size. I, for the most part, always have my lens hood on my 12-40, so if I screw it on, you will see that it is very, very comparable in size. It actually sits a little shorter when the lens cap is on the 12-40mm versus when it is off, it actually sits a little taller. The second thing I did notice about it was its weight. So when I originally held it for the first time, I actually thought it was quite a bit heavier than what I was expecting. And so when you do hold it to the 12-40mm, it is a heavier lens. But when you think about sort of the build quality of these lenses, I am more than okay with it because the Olympus M.Zuiko lenses are really, really great. They're really sturdy, they're made of really high quality material, and I feel like, you know, it's not plasticky, it is a solid lens, and I feel like it's going to weather great with time. As well, you have to think about weathering the elements. So having lenses and having camera gear that is able to tolerate the weather is always really great to have. So even though it is a little bit heavier than I was expecting, I'm more than okay with that. Another thing that I noticed about this lens is that when you use it at 7mm or when you use it at 14mm, the actual length of the lens doesn't get longer. So this is at 7mm right here, and this is at 14. So like the actual length of the lens from here to here doesn't get any longer. You will notice that the actual lens that you see there does move up and down within this frame here. So that is something I also do like about some of the M.Zuiko lineup. Another thing I really loved about this lens when I first used it and held it was this lens cap. Like this lens cap just goes over top, because you will notice, you know, it is like a dome inside the lens, so it's a dome. So because of that, the lens cap just goes over top of the lens like that, and it's super easy to take on and off. I find it so much easier than taking on other lens caps. So I really like this feature where like the lens goes over top instead of like kind of in within the ridges. A couple things that I was worried about when I first held this lens is, one, I found when I was zooming, trying just like fiddling with the 7mm to the 14mm, that it was a pretty tight area for you to zoom and with the manual focus clutch there. But really when I took it out on my camera to Cedar Creek Park, it didn't become a problem because you have your lens on your camera body, and so really with the one hand holding it and the other hand zooming, and I pretty much zoom with my left hand, so with the other hand zooming, it's really not a problem and it's not a tight space. But when I just held it by itself, it did feel like it was a tight space. And the other thing I was worried about is how I'm going to protect this lens. So if you remember here, like this lens does have like a dome shape to it. And so I was just worried about how I'm going to protect this lens, because I can't put on like a thread filter onto this lens. And if you remember from a video that I filmed a few months ago, I'm more of a freehand photographer and that I don't actually use a tripod a lot of the time when I go out. So that's just something I've been a little worried about, is just how I'm going to protect this lens. So with my first impressions of this lens out of the way, let's go take a look at some of the photos that I took with it last week. Alright, so I'll put up on the screen some of the photos that I've been able to take with this lens so far. So last week when I got the lens, I took it for a test drive to 3 locations. The first place was Cedar Creek Park, which is this really beautiful, gorgeous park here in Kelowna that overviews Okanagan Lake. The second place I took it to was Bluebird Beach, and on this day that I went, it was actually a really cloudy, stormy day. And then the third place I took it for a test drive was to downtown Kelowna. So I'll put all the photos up on the screen for you to see. So what are some of the things that I'm hoping to get out of the wide angle lens, the 7 to 14mm? One of the things that I'm hoping to get and play around with is its creative distortion. So it's not news that the wide angle lenses can create this sense of distortion in your images, but I have been particularly drawn to this sense of distortion that it creates, and so I'm excited to play around with sort of intentional creative distortion in my images. The second thing I'm hoping to get out of this lens is photographing in indoor places. So I love trying out new restaurants and new cafes and going to wineries, and a lot of these places take place indoors. And I find with the 12 to 40 millimeter, I just don't have that wide of an angle to really capture the sense of the place or the environment. So I'm really looking forward to having the 7 to 14 to be able to kind of capture that essence. The third thing that I'm really looking forward to getting out of this lens is playing with it to create self-portraits and filming with the 7 to 14 millimeter. So last week you might have seen the video where I talked about developing my skills now, filming on the EM1 Mark II, and that entire video was filmed on the EM1 Mark II with the 12 to 40 millimeter lens. And so I'm excited to try using the 7 to 14 millimeter to create some self-portraits and just experiment filming with it. So those are really the three things that I'm looking to get out of this lens, and I'm really looking forward to experimenting and playing with it and seeing what I can create. All right, everyone, so leave me a comment down below if you have the 7 to 14 millimeter or if you have a wide angle lens, and leave me a comment too on what you mostly use your wide angle lens for. I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.